They start off and Yushakov then praises Witkoff, says your boss essentially did a good job. That's referring to the Gaza agreement. Witkoff says, look, we're thinking that we could get something along similar lines with Ukraine. But what I think has caused consternation is that Witkoff seems to be very much advising the Russians on how to handle the situation.
This is where we cross the pond to get the very latest news coming out of the White House, Washington and beyond. Joining us, US reporter Harriet Alexander. Harriet, good evening.
Hi, Kate.
We're going to first of all, Harriet, actually head on the ground to Washington, where Talk's Peter Cardwell, often with us here on Times Radio, of course, is on the ground in Washington to tell us what he knows about two uniformed military personnel, National Guardsmen, that have been shot in downtown Washington, just blocks from the White House. Peter, thanks for being with us.
Hi, Kate.
What else do we know about what's happened here?
Well, this was a very shocking incident that happened just over an hour ago, and it's about a third of a mile from the White House. So DC police are dealing with it at the moment, but lots of other federal agencies are involved. So National Guardsmen are on the streets of Washington at the moment. Times Radio listeners may remember that the President Trump federalized the National Guard a few months ago. There are actually some legal cases about whether he's allowed to do that or not. But the fact is that National Guardsmen were at a metro station called Farragut West, which, as I say, is about a third of a mile, 3 blocks or so from the White House. And what happened was a shooter shot at least 2 National Guardsmen. They're in a critical condition at the moment. 3 people were apparently brought to hospital. I've actually been talking to someone who is just a couple of blocks away and was an eyewitness and heard what was going on, and then was bundled into a McDonald's nearby, and has only recently in the last few minutes been told that that person can now leave the McDonald's because the whole area and many federal buildings in the area, of course, have been in lockdown really for the last hour or so. So what's happened is that there are 3 people who've gone to hospital. We assume one of them is the shooter. What eyewitnesses have been saying is that they heard a few shots, perhaps the 2 shots towards the National Guardsmen, and then a volley of shots a few minutes later or a few seconds later. So it would appear that the shooter has been injured as well, perhaps critically. Now, President Trump isn't in Washington at the moment. He's actually at Mar-a-Lago at his resort there. He was playing golf at the time. He's now back in Mar-a-Lago. He's there for the Thanksgiving weekend, which is the reason I'm in Washington. And actually, Vice President J.D. Vance, he's in Kentucky at the moment as well. Lots of senior people talking about this. Trump himself saying the shooter will pay a very steep price. He's been briefed by his people at the White House, including the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who's been talking about this as well.
Yeah, he has posted on Truth Social, and he said that those Guard members that were shot were critically wounded. We didn't know about their condition. They're in separate hospitals, critically wounded. Describes the gunman as an animal. Peter, thanks so much for being with us. Great to speak to you. Peter Cardwell there, talk presenter, and often with us here on Times Radio, just on the ground in Washington, responding to that news, the shooting of 2 uniformed military personnel, National Guardsmen. Harriet, let's pick up on the rest of the day's news. Thanks for being with us, by the way. Should we talk about Steve Witkoff coaching Russian officials to deal with Trump? Donald Trump's been asked about this. This is, of course, as we wait to hear news on that negotiated peace deal between, well, at the moment, Ukraine and the US are working on it. Steve Witkoff has been over in Russia. Trump defended Witkoff late last night on Air Force One.
Well, I haven't heard it, no, but that's a standard thing, because he's got to sell this to Ukraine. He's got to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's what a deal maker does. You got to say, look, they want this. You got to convince them with this. That's a very standard form of negotiation. I haven't heard it, but I heard it was standard negotiation. And I would imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine, because each party has to give and take.
So you're not worried that he's too pro-Russian?
No, I think, look, this war could go on for years, and Russia's got a lot more people, got a lot more soldiers, So I think if Ukraine can make a deal, it's a good thing. I think it's great for both. Frankly, I think it's great for both.
Harriet, talk us through this. I mean, he's defending Steve Witkoff there. What's the reaction been to that? And is there any more news on where we're at with this peace deal?
Well, there's been anger from Republicans as well as from Democrats at the contents of this call. Just as sort of as background, the call was made on October 14th, and in the call, Steve Witkoff is speaking to Yuri Yushakov, who's a foreign policy advisor to Vladimir Putin, and Witkoff is essentially talking about the terms of a possible peace agreement with Ukraine. They start off and Yushakov then praises Witkoff, says your boss essentially did a good job. That's referring to the Gaza agreement. Witkoff says, look, we're thinking that we could get something along similar lines with Ukraine. But what I think has caused consternation is that Witkoff seems to be very much advising the Russians on how to handle the situation. Witkoff recommends that Yushakov tell his boss, obviously that's Putin, that he should give Donald Trump a phone call before their meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, and that Putin should call Trump a man of peace. That's the way to get to him. So I think that's sort of raised eyebrows, this idea of Witkoff coaching the Russians on how to deal with this situation.
Yeah, Ushakov saying that the call was confidential, the leak was unacceptable. He said that some of the leaked details were fake. Enter the fray Donald Trump's son, Don Trump Jr. He was one of the people who defended Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff. He quoted a post from a Republican strategist claiming that Witkoff was doing classic negotiation techniques to butter up his counterpart. And Trump Jr. said, it's almost like these media and deep state morons have never successfully negotiated a deal in the real world. So nothing to see here, according to Don Trump Jr. OK, all right. So that is that. Obviously, all the talk had been that Zelensky will meet Trump this week before the end of the month, effectively. Do we know any more about that?
We don't. I mean, as you just heard, Donald Trump himself is down in Mar-a-Lago, where he will be certainly Thursday and perhaps into Friday as well. The country essentially shuts down tomorrow, so nothing is really going to happen on Thanksgiving itself. December is just around the corner, so could it happen before December? I mean, it's possible, but we haven't heard anything certain yet. But it does seem that behind the scenes, things are still moving. Witkoff's been sent to Moscow. There was talk of Jared Kushner going with him. So they are, it seems, determined to get this done. Interestingly, the Kremlin said the leaking of this call was obviously intended to sabotage the progress in the deal. So we will see where this all leads.
OK, let's talk about the Georgia election interference case. Charges against Donald Trump, we learnt today, relating to election interference in the US state of Georgia have been dropped. Pete Skandalakis, you can probably say that better than I, the prosecutor who recently took over the case, said in court papers on Wednesday that he's decided to take no further action. Why, Harriet?
Well, it's been a very contentious case right from the beginning, because the prosecutor who brought it, Fannie Willis, she got involved with some of the members of the team. It was carried out in a very dubious manner. This is very much seen as being good news for Donald Trump. And of course, it comes after the bad news of his cases against Letitia James and James Comey being dropped. So this is quite welcome for Trump. It's something he just wanted to go away. So he's pretty pleased, I would imagine, about the whole thing.
OK. 14 others who had the same charges, including the former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani and ex-White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Have they also had their charges dropped?
That's not clear at the moment. We're not sure of that yet. So that's all still to be decided. We're looking into that.
OK, all right. Let's talk about the mother of Caroline Leavitt's nephew, detained by US immigration agents in Massachusetts as part of Trump's immigration crackdown. Bruna Ferreira, who's got a child with the White House press secretary's brother, is now in custody at an ICE facility. Goodness me, Harriet, any word from Caroline Leavitt on that today?
So she, perhaps not surprisingly, has not commented on this. The arrest actually took place on November 12th, although we're only hearing about it now. This is a woman called Bruna Ferreira, and she was the mother of a son with Caroline Levitt's brother, Michael. The word is that Caroline Levitt herself has not spoken to Bruna Ferreira in years. Michael and Bruna were separated, but Bruna was very much a part of the child's life. She was actually detained when she was driving to collect the child from school in New Hampshire. That's what her lawyer has said. The immigration officials in the US, they say that she was arrested. She came from Brazil and she came on a tourist visa and should have left by June 1999. They say she has a previous arrest for battery, although her lawyers contest that. And her lawyers say it's not true that she should have left, that she actually came over as a child under what's known as the DACA scheme, which was to give people who came as children with their parents, to give them legal status in the country. So her lawyer is arguing that she was here legally, that she didn't need to be removed. But ICE is saying no, she has to go, and she's been taken to a facility in Louisiana for ultimate deportation back to Brazil.
Look, thank you so much, Harriet. A bit of a short version today, a lot going on, as you know. Harriet Alexander, US reporter there with the latest from Washington and beyond.